All right, it is time for Film Goals 2024 for quarter one, as well as my first weekly wrap-up. Hey everyone, it is Shannon, and I'm super excited to be here today and to share with you this video. This is going to be me sharing what my film goals are for this first quarter of the year, so that's January through March 2024, as well as what I watched in the first week of the year for those goals. Now, I'm super excited about this. I actually often my film goals vary a lot year to year. I talked about how my last year goals went. I did do a video about that. I'll link it up above, but it was in my last video from last year. But I'll just say that, generally speaking, I ended up not watching a lot of movies last year, and I'm really sad about that. It was my all-time low, I think, at 35 new-to-me films. So I really fell off my film watching habit. So in 2024, I really want to reestablish my film watching habit. Now that's a bit of a nebulous goal. So what I've done is this moment, I just want to share that also January is usually I take off of doing videos because I am tired, and that means I can often be less articulate, which just happened. But I really want to document this experience and share what I've seen. And so I'm just going to be less articulate for the first while of the year. I'm just tired after the holidays. It always happens. It's why I usually take a break. This year I don't feel like doing that. I'm really excited about my film goals, and I really want to share what I've been watching. So we're going to try it, and hopefully, even if it's less articulate, it's still going to happen. So what are my film goals? So the overarching theme is simply that I just want to watch more movies and reestablish my film watching habit. To do this, I think always a good way to get back to something that you've gotten away from is to make it really easy. Make it really, really easy. So what I've done is for this first quarter, I'm going to focus on watching 3 different kinds of films. I made a list of all kinds of films, like genres and categories and different ways you can group films together, and I made a huge list of them, and then I looked at that list and I'm like, okay, what on here are things that I would always say yes to? What would I always say, yes, I want to watch that, yes, I will watch that, ooh, I'm excited when there's a new film like this available to watch. So I picked 3 categories where I have that level of excitement for. One of them is a bit more like 90% or maybe 85%, but 2 of them, it's 100%. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to watch those movies for this first quarter of the year. I'm going to try and watch something new every week, but I'm going to couch that a little bit because the first quarter is actually 13 weeks, and I know that I'll need time off here or there for events or holidays or just not feeling like it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and watch 10 films for each of the 3 categories over the first quarter of the year. So it's 13 weeks. 10 out of 13 feels pretty good, and I actually thought that maybe if I get to 10 new watches, these are all new watches, if I get to 10, then I can rewatch my favorite film or a favorite film of that genre or category. So that's sort of how I'm framing it. Each week I want to watch one of these 3 categories. So what are the 3 categories? This was so much fun to come up with, I can't even tell you. So, and then paring it down was like 2 were easy, and then the third was like, it's a bit of a stretch. So, and I think that's good. So the first category of films that I'm going to be watching this year is monster movies. I am so excited. I love monster movies. I added it to one of my film goals a couple of years ago, and it was like the first one that I finished. I had no idea like that I liked monster movies, but then when I thought about it, I'm like, of course I like monster movies. I mean, really, I love monster movies. Old monster movies, new monster movies. And there are a lot of them. I've seen a lot of them, but there are a lot of them. So that is my first category of film. My second category of film is dance movies. So I have always been someone who has loved dance movies. I used to watch Fred Astaire movies when I was a kid, and then I loved when we got like a whole bunch like Step Up and Take the Lead, and every once in a while we get sort of like a resurgence of dance films, but there are actually tons of dance films out there, and generally I think of a dance film as a dance film where dance is part of the plot, like the characters in the film are dancers, or like it's some kind of theme or plot. It's not necessarily a musical, which often has dancing, but a musical is what makes a musical is that the narrative is told through song, and there can be dance numbers, but they're not necessarily, the characters aren't necessarily dancers. Some musicals might slip in. We'll see how things go. But generally, for a dance movie, the characters are dancers, or dance is an important theme in the work. They're often centered around a competition of some kind, or resistance between people telling the protagonist that it's not a realistic, profession, or like those kinds of things. Like a dance movie when you see it, right? You probably know from the poster or from the trailer. It's very clear what makes a dance movie, I think. And then my third category is actually going to be newly added world cinema on Canopy. And I'm so excited about this. Canopy is a service. It's a streaming service that's connected to libraries. If you don't know if your library, I'll leave a link below for Canopy, and I would definitely check with your library to see if they are connected. How it works is it's kind of like Hoopla, but instead of for books or comics, actually for me with Hoopla, there are films there as well, but you get to borrow a certain amount of titles a month. So with Canopy, you get a certain amount of tickets, and that has a certain value of free watches a month, and they also have a catalog of certain things that are free to watch anyway. So it's a streaming service, and it has like so many different kinds of films. It has like art house film, it has classic film, it has cult film, horror film, film festival favorites, Criterion film. There is a huge array of film on Canopy, and I would highly recommend checking it out. It's been, for the past couple of years, when I look back and do my stats at the end of the year, it is without question the films I watch on Canopy have like a higher rating than any of the other films that I watch. I was a little surprised. I guess I was surprised at that, but now I just know that to be true. So I think it's a really good source for films, and I have really enjoyed a lot of films that I've watched on Canopy over the past couple of years. So I would highly recommend it, obviously. But I'm particularly the category. They actually have like a category, and I'll put a link for that, for newly added world cinema to Canopy. So it's going to be world cinema, but I liked having this because it could be any genre. And so after watching a monster movie and a dance movie, I mean, it adds an element of a bit of like surprise, kind of, right? Like if I'm feeling like watching something uplifting, or if I'm feeling like watching something like a horror movie, like I probably will be able to find a whole bunch of different things. I'm sure I will be able to find a whole bunch of different things in that category. So those are the three categories that I am working with, and I think it's a good combination because I can definitely make lists for each of these things, but also if I'm looking for something, I don't have to spend too much time trying to find something. And so hopefully it'll end up being a really good way to do things. So for the first week of the year, I did actually watch one film of each category. Yay! So I'm really happy that I've already watched 3 new films this year. So do you want to know what those 3 movies are? I hope so, because this is now we're into the weekly wrap-up part, or I might call it my weekend film. I used to do that back in the day. I don't know. I still am trying to find the best format for talking about film here on the channel, and I think I will continue to work on that. Anyway, let's get to the actual movies. So the monster movie of the week for week 1 was Godzilla, King of the Monsters from 1956, and this is the American film with Raymond Burr. So this was a very odd experience. Now, I watched it on Tubi. Tubi has a huge array of Godzilla movies. I honestly could probably changed monster films to Godzilla films. I could probably do that. I don't know if I will, because this was a bit of a complicated watch. The challenge is I've seen the original Godzilla, so I wouldn't want to include that until I've seen 10 new monster movies or Godzilla movies, and I kind of feel like, well, we'll get to that in a second. Anyway, so this follows a journalist who is in Japan when there's a Godzilla incident, and the journalist covers the story. When I was watching this, I was kind of like, there were just some red flag sort of, not just subtle, some things I'm just like, that just feels a bit weird, and that just feels a bit weird, and that just, we're only seeing that person talk when we see the back of their head, or that was only a reaction shot. Like, it just felt a bit weird. And turns out it is a bit weird because this is what is called a localized release, or it's an Americanized release. So from Wikipedia, they say in 1956, Jewel Enterprises Inc. released Godzilla King of the Monsters, an American localization of Godzilla from 1954. This version removed most of the political themes and social commentaries, resulting in 30 minutes of footage from the Japanese film replaced by new footage with Raymond Burr interacting with Japanese actors and lookalikes to make it seem like Burr was part of the original Japanese production. So, yeah. So, that's just weird. That's just weird. So part of this is the actual original Godzilla film. It has been over 10 years since I've seen Godzilla, and the Godzilla stuff is amazing. I mean, because the original Godzilla film is excellent. Highly recommend. Highly recommend. Not even for all film fans, not just if you like monster movies. It is an excellent film. So this took all of those parts, and they're in there. All the Godzilla stuff is in there, and all the Godzilla stuff is amazing. But we have this strange framing device with this journalist as if he's part of what's going on. So it felt weird. It was weird. But the truth is I hadn't seen it, and I'm working on watching films I hadn't seen, and now I have seen this one. And when I looked up Godzilla films or monster films on Tubi, I picked this one because it was one of the earliest ones. And as I said, there's a lot on Tubi. There looks like more than there is because they have some versions that are dubbed and some versions that are subtitled so that you can choose, which is great because I always prefer subtitled. And so, and so I might watch some of those in the future, but now I just feel like this just didn't feel like there was a lot of stuff that was just weird with the voiceovers and but like the base of the story and the Godzilla stuff is great, but the framing device and all of the sort of like stuff that they did was very strange. So I'm not sure what to do because I feel like in some ways I want to just like watch the next actual Godzilla film, but then it also feels like it makes the most sense to watch the original Godzilla film, but that wouldn't be getting a new to me film in. So I might think about it a little bit and maybe pick a different monster movie. So let me know your suggestions. Do you think I should go in and watch Godzilla, the next one, which is Godzilla Raids Again from 1956, or I could rewatch Godzilla, but I haven't seen it. I saw it in 2010, so that's, gosh, is that 14 years ago now? On my spreadsheet, I'm like, yeah, I got the DVD from Zip, and I'm like, wow. Who remembers Zip? It was a Canadian thing, but it was like Netflix when they were like mailing DVDs as opposed to a streaming service. So it has been a minute. So anyway, I'm not quite sure what to do. This was not great. I couldn't 100% confirm, like, while I was watching that this was weird because of the sort of taking footage from one film. And I watched a couple of older science fiction and horror movies where they've done that, but it felt a little off, and it was a little off. And so that's really too bad because the original Godzilla is amazing. And also now I kind of don't feel like I want to watch it right away because I have this in mind. And so I think it needs a little time. So maybe I will try and work on watching 9 more monster movies. And if I get those 10 new ones in, I'll go back and treat myself and watch the original Godzilla. And I think it's probably safe to jump to Godzilla Raids Again or Godzilla versus, gosh, there's so many. There's the Mothra. Is it Mothra versus Godzilla? And then there's Son of Godzilla. There's a lot of them. The Wikipedia page on Godzilla is great. It has like all of the different eras and all of the different like film orders and stuff like that. So I found that really helpful to get some context. So anyway, so I enjoyed the monster stuff in this movie. The rest of the stuff, not so much, so that was a bit of a miss. And then my dance film, this one is a little complicated, which I'll get to in a sec, but the dance film that I decided to pick is Time to Dance from 2021. I watched this on Netflix. It's actually an Indian dance film, and it starts with like a flash mob and like all of this stuff, and I was like, and lots of singing and dancing, and I did not expect there to be singing and dancing. I don't think it's a Bollywood film because, again, I think a Bollywood film has to be like what a musical is, which is telling the song through the narrative through the song. I'm not 100% sure on that, and I'm certainly no expert in Bollywood, but this was an Indian dance film set in London, and we follow a very, very classic plot of someone who is working towards a competition, and then they get injured, and then they lose their partner like their dance partner chooses someone else, so they need a new partner. But there's so little time. How can they learn the steps? New steps? How are they going to do this? It's actually very similar to Strictly Ballroom in a lot of ways, but it's a very, very standard dance story. So it ends up being the waiter who's a hip hop dancer and needs to learn ballroom dancing. So that is the plot, and it was very fun. There were some things that I was a little like, ooh, I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure about that. There was a little uncomfortable moments about some things that I don't even really know how to describe. But in terms of some of the comedy that I think was one thing I'm not sure if it was supposed to be comedy or not, and I'm not quite sure. But in terms of the story and the stuff like that, it's a very standard dance story. There are training montages and challenges, and even like can we save the studio amidst all this? There is a lot of plot going on in this one, and then there is a fair amount of dancing as well. The one thing, and it does lead up to a competition, and they're the underdogs, and it's a standard dance movie plot, and that part was very enjoyable. One of the challenges I did have with this one is that the ballroom numbers, when they were done in terms of the competition, they weren't done to ballroom dance music, and I'm a little surprised at that. Like, they looked okay, but I'm just like, it was weird because from the dance move, I was like, that's a rumba, but the music isn't rumba music. And I'm like, and I'm not 100% sure, but I watched a lot of dance movies and a lot of ballroom stuff over the years. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure that like rumba music has to follow a certain like pacing or time signature or whatever. It has certain elements, and the music was not that. And so that threw me off a little bit because you get so excited, and then the competition, and now we're going to see all of the different numbers and stuff like that. And the choreography was great, and the visuals were great. It was very stunning and beautiful, but I was like, because that's like, you're really like excited, and then I was like, oh, but that's not rumba music, or that's not Paso Doble music. I'm like, I don't understand. So anyway, but I will say with this one, it is a little bit more about the characters and their story than the dance. Like, it's framed around the competition and stuff like that, but it's a bit more about the characters and the chemistry and that kind of stuff. But it was pretty but there were some things that just felt like, is that possible? But there's always like those moments in the dancing. Again, I think it was when and all of this, and can we save the studio? I'm like, okay, everything's going on. The whole kitchen sink is in here. And so that's the case. I will say one of the things that was challenging about this film, and challenging I find in general, is that afterwards when I was looking up about the film and trying to find out more about it, there was not tons to find out about it, is that, and I don't know how to talk about stuff like this, is that one of the actors was acquitted from a crime that is very serious, and that made me feel like, do I want to talk about this at all? And I don't normally find that stuff out, but because there wasn't tons of information on this, and there was only like 2 reviews, and one of them said something, I'm like, whoa, like, is that true? And it took a while of digging, which I don't always do, but the curiosity took over, and so I had to look into it. And so trigger warnings if you do look into it, but it has to do with one of the actors and a crime that they were acquitted for due to lack of evidence. So I'm just like, I don't know what approach to take on that. It hasn't come up. There's a lot of discussion about that kind of stuff in the book community, but I haven't heard a lot of people talk about that in the film community, in terms of works by like when you feel, I don't know, because I'm like, I only researched it so much and it was something I was completely unaware of. So what if it's something in the actual, like in the news that I hear, more regularly? Anyway, so I just wanted to mention that mostly because I am trying to figure out my approach on those kinds of things, whether you separate the art from the artist, or not, and how is it different when it's in the present versus in the past, and those kinds of things. And also, like, I really didn't know about it before going into it, just like with Godzilla. I didn't know that it was an Americanization. And if I knew that, I would have picked a different film. So, and with this, I don't know if I would have picked a different film. To be honest, I probably would have picked a different film. And is that fair? Who gets to make those decisions? I don't know. If you are curious about it, I'll put a link to the person, not the person involved from the film, but where I found the most information. I'm like, do I want to link that? I don't know. Anyway, I know one of those things just sort of like your curiosity can take over, but to be honest, it was pretty upsetting. So I don't know. I will put a link to something down below that can guide you if you are curious, but trigger warnings. So yeah, so off to a great start. Where are we going from here? So the film that I chose for our newly added World Cinema to Canopy this week was Young Ip Man. So this was released in 2020. It's from China, and it follows Ip Man, who was the person who trained Bruce Lee. So it's a historical figure. It's a real person that's being depicted. And this film is, taking a take on when they were quite young. It's set in, I think it's 1918. Did I write it down? I think it was 1918 in Hong Kong. So I'm not an expert in Ip Man, but I have watched the foreign film series with Donnie Yen, directed by Wilson Yip. I've also watched The Grandmaster, directed by Wong Kar-wai with Tony Leung, and I've also watched Master Zed, Ip Man Legacy with Max Zhang. So I've seen a fair amount of films, maybe all of the other films about him, and so I have some context. Like, he is the person who trained Bruce Lee. He is an important historical figure. This film, I feel like I don't feel almost any connection with the character of this film to other depictions I've seen of the character. Now, they are supposed to be younger here, and there are some moments of philosophy, where they stop and pause and think about, philosophies, and that's a characteristic for sure, because there is about intention and, guidelines kind of thing. Guidelines is not the right word, but like philosophical intent and, action directed by a philosophical perspective is relevant, and it does come up. But generally speaking, this is like, I don't even know, like, this is an action suspense thriller that's historical. But the plot and the situation feels like akin to Die Hard. Like, it is really heightened, and and I don't want to spoil it because it's actually quite a short film at 1 hour and 19 minutes, which is, I will admit, entirely why I picked it. I was going to pick something else, but it was 2 hours and 20 minutes. And I'm like, it was already pretty late and I wanted to get one more film in. So I'm like, okay, I'm going with this one. I had a hard time with this one. So one, the anachronisms with like the clothes. I don't know, did I pick a picture? No, I didn't pick a picture. But the anachronisms in terms of what people were wearing stylistically sometimes, or even like the books in the library and stuff like that, I'm like, that does not look like 1918, like at all. And then the story, there were some good action sequences, I will give it that, but I just felt like, I just feel like, to me, it felt like a disservice to use this name of this person. And like, as I said, I'm not an expert, but the idea that it was in this situation that was like a Die Hard type situation feels quite unfathomable, especially given the content. Like, for me, I've seen a lot of the other stuff, and I don't know why everything else, like, it just was such a huge disconnect. And so it was not a big win. Now, if this was just sold as a historical suspense action film, fine. It's over the top. I don't know. I don't usually care about anachronisms, but sometimes when something feels a little off, then you get a little more about, like, what about that? And what about that? And I was totally doing that. And there was some good character moments with some people that he knew, but it just felt so unlikely. Like, just all of the things felt so completely unlikely that I found it hard to engage and enjoy the film. So I was so sad. I was so sad. And that one too, there's very little information about it. It does not have a Wikipedia page. The IMDb page has like 2 reviews, and one of them just simply says weird. And and it's too bad, because I just feel like it just feels like such a big miss. Like, I just don't understand. Like, I understand there is a name, like, if you see a name that you recognize, you're more likely to watch something, but I just felt like it's not backed up, or there was not a big, good connection to a lot of the things that I've heard about the person. So that for me just felt really not great. So I gotta say, this week was like a really, really rocky start. Like, I still think this idea of watching a monster movie, a dance movie, and a newly added world cinema to Canopy is a great idea, and I am not deterred from it at all, even though each of the films I watched had some pretty hefty, challenging situations or like responses afterwards, or just were a bit strange. But also, like, for me, this is one of the things that I literally just picked, like, what was one of the first things that came up in the search. I just wanted to get the ball rolling. So I know that this can happen when I don't do a lot of research. I totally take that on. I'm not mad at myself for not doing that, because I want to watch the film for the film. And then it's up to me to deal with the response and the fallout after. If I don't like it, or if there's some kind of unexpected challenge, that's totally on me. And I know that to be true, and I can handle that. That's it's not no problem. Sometimes some of these things were pretty challenging, but like with the Godzilla movie, I know I would rather watch Japanese Godzilla movies, so that's no problem. I can just look them up on IMDb and just see what country it's from, and then be like, okay, that's what I want to watch when I'm talking about those films from like the 50s through the 70s and stuff like that. And I really want to see the new Godzilla movie. Oh my gosh, I really want to see it. And I totally didn't even know that it was coming out. I didn't even, like, it wasn't on my anticipated list from last year because I didn't know about it. And then for dance films, again, like, I just, that was an unusual situation. No way to really predict that. And with young Ip Man, like, honestly, I just, I went with the time. I went with shorter films. And with all of these, I went with shorter films. And sometimes that can happen. So that did kind of kick me in the pants, but whatever. Like, I mean, I still watched the 3 movies in the first week of the year, and I am thrilled with that. And I still feel very centered in this idea. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I might do some of these as vlogs, but doing editing, as anyone knows who does vlogs, can be a lot of work. So if doing a sit-down video that's a chatty video, like a weekly wrap-up like this one was, with the goals at the front, might be more likely, or I don't know. I'll have to see how things go. As I said, the beginning of the year is always a little bit rocky for me, but I got to it. I got to share these 3 films as they were. Let me know, have you watched anything new this year? Have you set your film goals? If you made categories like this, do you know what they would be? I had a huge list, and I even thought about like randomizing like that, and like randomizing the categories. I thought that might be a lot of fun. Who knows? Maybe I will do that in quarter 2. But for January through March, monster movies, dance movies, and newly added world cinema to Canopy is what is going to be the focus of my new watches. I hope that it is a fun journey to watch. Let me know if you've watched anything new this year that you like, and maybe let me know your favorite monster movie. I have probably asked that question before. But it's always a good one. It's always a good one. And do you like Godzilla movies? I love Godzilla movies, so I'm looking forward to seeing more. But I might pick something else this week. We'll have to see how things go. All right, thank you so much for watching, and I will be back soon with another video.